Today, November 13th, 2020 marks the 15th anniversary of Eddie Guerrero's death. The news of his death still stings today just as much as it did 15 years ago. Eddie was not just a great wrestler, he was a great father and a great husband. Eddie had demons though, and unfortunately those demons got the better of him when he was found dead in his hotel room in Minnesota while touring with WWE on November 13th, 2005. I am making this video today as a tribute to my favorite wrestler of all time, Eddie Guerrero. Now, I'm not doing this for clicks or likes or anything. This is dropping on the day of his death as a tribute because he meant so much to me as a fan of pro wrestling. Eddie Guerrero is the reason I am a wrestling fan today and the reason why I wanted my channel to have the word Heat in it. I was adamant. I wanted to have Heat as a tribute to him, Latino Heat, Eddie Guerrero, you get it. I thought this video would be a great way to honor him by discussing some of my favorite moments and matches of his, while also explaining why he meant so much to me as a fan and continues to do so. For me as a Latino kid watching wrestling, Eddie Guerrero was a role model, a hero of sorts. He was everything to the Latin community of WWE fans. Latino people are some of the most loyal and passionate people towards their own kind. This is why WWE has been desperately trying to recreate a Mexican star ever since. Let's be honest, Rey Mysterio has done an excellent job in that role, but when he was away from WWE, the likes of Alberto Del Rio and Lucha House Party just did not cut it. And Rey Mysterio too, for all his greatness, was no Eddie Guerrero, and I mean that with zero disrespect to Rey Mysterio. Eddie had it all. He was a different breed. He had the in-ring ability, the charisma, storytelling, and the entertainment side of pro wrestling down to a T. The stuff that Eddie did with China as an on-screen couple is still some of the most entertaining segments to this day. Not even to mention the classic storyline he had with Rey Mysterio and his son Dominic, that we're actually seeing pop up on Raw in some way, shape, or form with this Seth Rollins and Rey Mysterio family feud. Let's back it up a little. Let's start at the very beginning of Eddie's wrestling career. He first burst onto the American scene in the ECW by having a series of classic matches with Dean Malenko. If you have not seen these matches, I highly recommend you check them out on the WWE Network. These are some of the best wrestling matches you'll ever see, period. When I got older, when Eddie passed away, I was very young. When I got older, I went back and I watched these matches and I was like, oh my god. Like, this stuff is some of the stuff that you see today. And some of the stuff that we've seen throughout the indies, like this series of matches he had with Dean Malenko, easily hands down the most influential, some of the most influential matches in the history of wrestling. If you watch interviews, if you watch guys like CM Punk talk about this series of matches, you can see all the influence in wrestling today that those matches had. From here, he moved to WCW, where he gained international fame as a pivotal part of WCW's Cruiserweight division. Eddie then jumped ship to WWE in 2000 as a member of the stable, the Radicals, along with his friends Chris Benoit, Perry Saturn, and Dean Malenko. Eddie really didn't do a whole lot in his original run in WWE, and was eventually released due to drug-related issues. He was brought back, however, in the summer of 2002, and this is when I started to become a fan of Latino Heat. His matches with the likes of RVD and Edge during this era were captivating, and they stand the test of time, especially his matches with Edge. I think they did a lot for both men's singles career in WWE. This was back in the SmackDown 6 era. Yes, Eddie was also already a very respected worker. This was exemplified by the fact that Stone Cold wanted to work with him specifically when he was already injured and he had first came back from walking out in 2002. Edge, on the other hand, was not a particularly successful single star. He was known as more of a tag team guy, so working with Eddie really helped him. Then Eddie formed a tag team with his nephew Chavo Guerrero, which later turned into a feud between the two. It was here that Eddie developed his famous lie, cheat, and steal persona. Eddie was unlike other small quote-unquote work rate wrestlers of today. He's not like those guys like Sami Zayn, Finn Balor, Kevin Owens, that just charisma vacuums. Eddie had a persona and a larger-than-life character that people at home could connect with. And this is another thing that made Eddie stand out from all the rest of all time. Not just his generation, but of all time. This version of Eddie was my favorite, with the lowrider classic when he would come out to the ring with his music blaring, the lowrider. It was the whole presentation. It was just awesome. One of the best entrances of all time. Hands down, one of the 10 best entrances in my opinion. This character led to my favorite match and my favorite moment of Eddie's career, and I think just about everyone else's. No Way Out 2004, when he defeated Brock Lesnar to win the WWE Championship for the only time in his career. We've seen the clip a million times of Eddie celebrating with the belt to the people with his name in the crowd, and he's jumping in the crowd, he's celebrating. Like that, for me, that's one of those moments I look back on and I can't help but smile. How could you not? Like, if you don't smile at that, I don't know, something's wrong with you. It's safe to say that Eddie did his best work during this era in 04 and 05, with, I think, his best work ahead of him had he not died. As we know, in 2006, he was scheduled to face Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 22, and he was really finding his own as a character. Like, his character was just hitting on all cylinders. Close to the time of his death, he was in that feud with Batista, where it was like, they're friends, but Eddie's trying to deceive him. He was like, oh, I'm not the lying and cheating Eddie anymore. I'm a good guy. I cleaned up my act. And they hugged. And you can see Eddie looking at the title. You know, it's just some great storytelling, man. He really had the entertainment aspect of WWE down to a T, like I said before. This brings me to another match. His match with Kurt Angle at WrestleMania 20. One of the best WrestleMania main events of all time. Yes, it didn't actually main event WrestleMania, but it was booked as a main event. And then we all know Chris Benoit won the title later on. We have Eddie and Benoit celebrating with their championships. An awesome moment. A lot of people point to this and say this was the last great WrestleMania moment. And Kevin Nash even famously said that this was the last great WrestleMania moment because both guys were the same size as the referee and the suspension of disbelief was just gone. I don't find that to be true, though. I don't find Kevin Nash's words. I don't take him very seriously. Now I have to talk about his feud with Rey Mysterio. If you're asking me to give you like my top 15 feuds of all time, this feud is going to be in there. It's probably going to be close to like 3 or 4. Like, this will probably make my top 5, bottom line. This feud, Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero, was such, like, this is storytelling in wrestling at its finest. I remember just vividly the match they had at SummerSlam, the ladder match. I've watched that match at least 15 times, minimal. Everything was so perfect. The build up to it, the promo with Eddie in the ring reading the book, the child book to Dominic and saying, I'm your poppy, and that catchphrase, man. Another thing too, Eddie was so cool that you could wear his t-shirts in public and not be embarrassed. I wear his t-shirts all the time. Actually, as I'm recording this, I have one of my Eddie shirts on. I've got so many shirts of his. This was really when I think Eddie became an iconic figure in WWE history. I think it's this feud with Rey Mysterio. If this didn't happen, I don't even know where Rey Mysterio would be. I don't know how long he would have lasted at WWE. This feud really put Rey on the map. It solidified Eddie as a bona fide Hall of Famer, certified first ballot, no matter what happened in his career. Because the rap still on him at the time was that he was champion, but it didn't go too well. He lost to the JBL pretty quickly. But this feud with Rey Mysterio put him over the top. It's one of those things that he'll be remembered for forever. Long, when we're all gone, hundreds of years, people are going to look back at this Eddie Guerrero-Rey Mysterio feud as one of the absolute best in WWE history. And now this brings me to the end. I remember vividly where I was when I found out the news that Eddie had passed away. My dad told me that day after school. He knew I was a big fan of Eddie. I was heartbroken, and to say that the void that Eddie left in my heart as a wrestling fan, it cannot be filled by any other wrestler. That void is just there constantly. I always think, like, what would an Eddie Guerrero and John Cena feud look like? I know they feuded before, but John Cena is a top guy. What would Eddie Guerrero and, I don't know, Seth Rollins look like? Or Eddie Guerrero as CM Punk had looked like? In my mind, no one else comes close to Eddie. I could watch his matches all day long. His segments are ridiculously entertaining, whether he was a bad guy or a good guy. The episode of SmackDown that was dedicated to him as a tribute show is probably the most emotional tribute show in wrestling history. Arguably the most emotional show in history. I have watched that episode so many times, and I get teary-eyed listening to Chris Benoit, Triple H, Rey Mysterio, and Batista talk about the kind of man that Eddie was. As I grew older and could really appreciate Eddie's contributions behind the scenes, it became another aspect of his game that I respected. I'm glad that WWE respects his legacy and accomplishments when they mention him or when we see clips of him in video packages. He deserves it. He was one of a kind, and there will never ever be another like Eddie Guerrero. Rest in peace, Eddie, and thank you for all the entertainment and joy that you brought to me and many other wrestling fans over the years.